Joining me right now with reaction to all of it is none other than House Judiciary Committee member, Congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz. Good to see you, Congressman.
Thanks for having me.
Right? This is what bugs me. And you know what? I'm going to just tell you this. Like, I'm not being political about it, okay? No politics. I'm talking about economics here and how we continue growing as a country and we help the people in the middle, right? It has nothing to do, I say, fundamentally with politics and everything to do with economic prosperity. And I don't believe AOC or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren have a clue about economic prosperity and don't fundamentally even care about it. What's your thought?
There is a war on prosperity right now in the Democratic primary, and they're all trying to have an arms race against one another to attack people in our country who do well. But the good news is that Donald Trump is presiding over a blue-collar boom in our country. We're seeing wealth accumulated and wages rising faster for people who have those blue-collar jobs, who just want to play by the rules and ensure that their family has got a fair shake. You know, you had Don Lemon on. Don Lemon is not a journalist. He is a hack. He is like CNN's professional eye roller who always wants to gasp himself out of breath at everything he sees from the president.
I do believe he hit his head. Do we have that video? He kind of like hit his head. He was laughing so hard it slammed onto the desk.
But it is so indicative of the fact that they have contempt not just for this president, not just for his allies in the Congress, but they have utter contempt for the people who voted for this president, and ultimately they have contempt for their own viewers, which is probably why viewers are leaving CNN at such a fast rate. Right,
there
exactly.
You go. Yeah, no, you got to kind of like the people themselves, right? And I think that that's one of the successes of Donald Trump. I think he actually fundamentally cares and seems to like the middle class, whereas you see this sort of disdain, if you would, you know, for anybody who's really out there trying to do things the right way. And that's what they lose in all this. You know, they want to say that Trump supporters are racist, that they're homophobic, Islamophobic. I mean, we could cue the deplorable soundbite, right, from Hillary Clinton. We all remember that very well. But that's really, I think, what they believe. And it seems so touched to me because, you know, I meet supporters of the president all over the country all the time. And they're some of the nicest, most down-to-earth, genuine people. And to think that CNN is out there making fun of them like they did last night and frankly every other day, it's not right.
Donald Trump isn't just leading a campaign, he is presiding over a political movement. That's why we've only gained strength leading into 2020 and why this impeachment sham is only intensifying our support for our transformational president. Because in real America, we see things happening that will impact our lives. A better trade deal in our hemisphere, actually standing up to China, President Trump functionally ending our involvement in the Syrian civil war and not starting any new forever wars. These elements of an American nationalist economic agenda paired with a realistic view of the world where we kill the terrorists and actually come home to bring the resources to our country, that is going to fuel a transformational victory in 2020. And you know what? After the Democrats have impeached Trump and he comes back and wins anyway, wait till you get wait till we get a load of Donald Trump in his second term. I think we're going to be even more transformative in the way that we change Washington, D.C. and America for the better.
But this is why I think it's important that people are motivated because we really are at risk of a constitutional crisis. I would argue that they put us in a constitutional crisis, right? I mean, you're there in the House. Nancy Pelosi hanging on to the darn articles of impeachment, effectively, possibly getting us closer and closer to that constitutional crisis, finally turning them over to the Senate. But what cracks me up about it, Congressman, is that they're now going on and on and on about how they want to bring witnesses. They had the opportunity to bring witnesses, and they did not take it.
Democrats do not have a compelling case factually, and so they have to continue to manufacture a new bombshell du jour for every day so that they can try to keep people's interest in something that fundamentally doesn't impact our lives. Again, we're focused on wages, the economy, prosperity for the American people, and Democrats are having a policy disagreement over who perceived what about how to make the Ukraine great again. And I think that they are showing through these impeachment proceedings how far they've gotten away from the kitchen table issues that will lead to the re-election of the president.
Yeah, and by the way, you want to know who helped Ukraine? It wasn't President Obama.
No, you nailed it. Donald Trump delivered the lethal aid to the Ukraine that President Obama would not do because he didn't want to frighten Russia. Again, you see with President Trump, tough engagement where necessary, but a realistic view of the world where we're not going to hand the 21st century over to China by overexerting our military. We're going to be smarter and we're going to be better for our country. Strategic.
That's what you've got to be. Okay, don't go anywhere, Matt Gaetz. Congressman Matt Gaetz is back with me. Congressman, I mean, it just seems like we're hearing a lot about the NSC these days, and Bolton's connected to all of it.
Sure. The good news is that now that Mr. O'Brien is in that role, we have seen a lot of turnover at the NSC. And I think, frankly, we're draining the swamp in a lot of areas in our government. And the NSC certainly has not been excluded from that reform effort that we see underway. But does anyone find it a little suspicious that John Bolton supposedly has this silver bullet testimony and we didn't hear peep from him during the investigation in the House of Representatives? And all of a sudden, now that we're here, essentially at the eve of what should be a motion to dismiss this impeachment, all of a sudden there are these bombshell revelations.
I find it suspicious.
Very suspicious. And
I think it's quite deliberate, actually, and I think it's about something much more than money. I mean, sure, you could say, well, maybe the publisher wanted to get it out there because it would help sell copies, and the timing is, fortuitous in that sense. But I think it's about something bigger. I think that, he holds a grudge. I think this is revenge. Could it be?
I do not believe John Bolton is particularly thrilled with his tenure at the White House. I view the world in much the way I think the president does, through a realistic just read on our foreign policy. And I asked the president once, why did you hire John Bolton, someone who seems to disagree with you in so many ways? And the president assured me that he wasn't like ascribing to the Bolton view of the world, but he did think it made the administration less predictable with some of our adversaries to have Bolton's advice around. That may have made John Bolton a little bit hurt in his feelings. That may have built some resentment that he was there in the administration more as a prop than as an actual advisor. And that resentment may have germinated in some just unflattering things about the president that may or may not be true.
Look, I brought this up last night to the viewers. I was all over the Venezuela story. I still am.
Yes, you were.
And I have a lot of sources, and I talked to a lot of people. I can tell you that during the height of that crisis, I was fielding all kinds of phone calls from all kinds of sources that were saying, what the heck is wrong with John Bolton? He didn't get it. And they blamed him for a lost opportunity there in Venezuela because he was not listening to our intel sources on the ground, people that had spent 20 years in Venezuela and knew the ins and outs and all the people. He didn't want to hear it. He did not want to listen. And the constant complaint that I heard from multiple sources was, for Bolton, it's his way or the highway. He has his vision, and he's only doing this. Don't forget, this is the guy that was involved in trying to take out Chavez, too, right, and remove him from power, and he was unsuccessful on that attempt as well. So at some point, you've got to say, I need to listen, right, to people around me. I may have my view of how things are, but I'm only as good as my team. And he wasn't willing to listen to any team members. And then you top it off with the fact that maybe the president thought he had a good cop, bad cop kind of thing going on, and he could be good and Bolton could be bad. But you know what? Good cop, bad cop, they're both in on the game, right? And Bolton was never with the president.
There's a reason why in this country we don't just take as an article of faith the accusations made by former disgruntled employees. I think it's right for us to have a critical lens on anything that John Bolton would have to offer. And when you look at the foreign policy successes of Donald Trump's administration, they largely have occurred despite John Bolton's advice, not because of it. And because his advice wasn't taken, because he left on bad terms, I think that is an appropriate context to evaluate whatever contribution he might have. And certainly when you lay on top of that the very suspicious timing, it doesn't lead me to believe that there's anything really different or new here. We should get over this national nightmare of impeachment and on to the work that's important to the American people.
Not to mention this. If you're about to hand out $400 million to a country you know has a serious problem with corruption, and you learn along the way that Joe Biden, the former vice president of the United States, scored his son an $80,000 a month board gig, which, by the way, I've seen lots of board gigs. That's a very high paying one, extremely high paying one. When you know he's got no knowledge of the energy business, don't you scratch your head and say, what the heck was going on?
My fellow Floridian Pam Bondi did a brilliant job showing the country how sleazy this deal was with Hunter Biden, and really reflecting on the fact that even Hunter Biden himself admitted that the only reason he had this job was because his dad was the vice president of the United States handling Ukraine policy. Hunter Biden wasn't hired for his expertise. He was hired because this Ukrainian company was in trouble and wanted to get out of that trouble. And by the way, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, had an obligation to try to clear up what occurred so that on a going forward basis, our country could be trusted and that we wouldn't be viewed through this corrupt lens that really may have been instituted by the Biden crime family.
Wow. Congressman Gaetz, it is always good to talk to you. Very good to see you tonight. Thank you so much. We got a lot more coming up this evening for you.